Welcome to the Royal Family Real Estate Podcast, where none of us are shy about giving our opinions. We are a local, family-owned real estate brokerage and pride ourselves on being experts in the Chicagoland area. Join us on our podcast journey to hear what's going on in our local real estate market, as well as get an insider's point of view on this crazy industry. Welcome to the show.
Royal Hartwig, D-Day is among us and past August 17th when the industry changed. How you doing?
I'm good. It's kind of been like Y2K, where it's like, all this is going to happen. All of a sudden it was like, okay, everything seems to be fine.
Did you wake up in the morning underneath your desk, like looking out to make sure everything was okay? Or were you like, let's do this? And you went out like ready to go?
You're talking about
D-Day, August 17th.
Yeah, not Y2K.
Yeah.
I mean, I felt, well, we had our ice cream social, so I was all full of ice cream and fat and happy after that. I don't know. It just didn't seem to be a lot of we made so much more noise as brokers than what actually happened, but we were prepared for it as a company. So I think that's part of it. But, I had a listing that went on and we had 5 offers that weekend, and the agents put their compensation into the offer as I had. One of them did. And the other ones I said, if you're looking for compensation, it's not on the MLS anymore and you need to put it in your offer. And they did.
Yeah.
So it really is not that big of a deal. Now, maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but really it just seems like it's been made up to be more than it is. I'm not saying it's not a big deal because it's a major structural change, that now commission has to be factored in the offer. It's completely transparent now, which I think is a good thing. All the buyers know what their broker's being paid. The seller sees that, and it's a negotiating point when the offer comes in, which is good for sellers. I'm not saying that that's something where, how we're approaching that, we present it to the seller, we go over everything, but it is an item that if the agent's asking for 3%, the seller may counter that as well as other things in the offer.
Yeah, you're looking at it from like a net perspective right now. I think going into August 17th, everybody kept saying D-Day. And I feel like I have a lot of friends in the industry, and there's friends that are like, hey, we got this, it's no big deal. And there's other friends that were, you saw that it was like, they're nervous. Like, how is this going to change our industry? And I get that. I think that anytime you're looking at like, well, how do you feed your family, and where that income comes from when things are changing in there, that could cause some anxiety, especially in this already tough business, right, of real estate. But to wake up and to kind of like, hey, nothing really changed. Us as agents now, the big difference is there's no co-op on the MLS, and that we're submitting it. And we might not be perfect as a whole right off the bat, but then you got listing agents like yourself or myself that are just like, hey, submit your commission. But I think working up to it, there was so much information overload that it was a little overwhelming for us as agents, and what do we handle it this way? Do we handle it this way? Where if we just look at other industries or we look at other places that have already kind of started this, maybe out west, you realize that it's more of just, guys, it's done a little bit differently now. This is probably better to submit your commission.
Yeah. Well, I think part of it is that they're, because of all these lawsuits, all these companies that got sued for a lot of money, each company was, not really forthcoming with what their policy is going to be, which makes sense. Like we can't all collude and say this is what our policy is.
It's kind of the way we got into it in the first place, right?
Right, exactly. So we went into this not really knowing how the broker community and other cooperating brokers, how everyone was going to be handling this, where we don't put co-op compensation in our listing agreement now as a company, Royal Family Real Estate, as you know. So it's not saying the seller's not going to pay a co-op to a buyer's broker coming in if they request it. But we're not saying, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we have to offer X amount out. Now we're saying that this is what you pay us. And when the offer comes in, the buyer's broker is going to put what they want in their offer. And that can be negotiated. And if the amount is less than what the buyer has to pay, then the buyer may have to pay that buyer broker some of the difference than what the seller is. But, the main challenge I've had is trying to explain this to some sellers that are just so used to it structurally being part of the process is that you pay, because it was very easy before. You would say, okay, this is what you pay as the co-op, the buyer's broker that comes in, this is what you pay us. Now it's when you're presenting it, this is what you pay us, so that's easy. But when you're going over a estimated proceeds sheet with them, showing them all their expenses, when you hit that item of co-op broker, we don't know what that number is going to be. And it's not like it could be a few $100s or 500, like it could be thousands and tens of thousands of dollars depending on the price. So, what number do you put in that co-op? Do you put 0 if the buyer's broker doesn't ask for it and the buyer's paying their broker directly, or do you, which I wouldn't recommend, or, you put 1%, 2%, 2.5%, 3%. What I've been doing is just telling them that there's going to be highly likely some number that goes into that buyer co-op. It might be X, or it might be right around X. So you want to expect that, but it could be less, could be a little bit more. It's all something that will be presented with the offer, and we evaluate at that point. So I'm trying to simplify it, but not too simple, but also so they know that that's an expense that will likely come down the road, but it's not something that we have to show our hand and say, this is how much we're giving.
Yeah. It allows us to be better negotiators at the end of the day, right? We allow the whole offer come to us, including compensation. So instead of saying, hey, Mr. Seller, this is the recommended amount and putting that on the MLS, that's gone. Now we have that come to us and we can negotiate from there. We talked a little bit earlier about, there was just a lot for us as agents to be able to work through. And to me, there was misinformation in it because we didn't know. And one of them was I kept hearing at a certain time frame that sellers weren't going to pay commission to the buyer. And I think I always disagreed with that, because I think as a seller, you're going to want to pay somebody to come in and bring a buyer for you. I don't think that's going to change. Now, if you have a great buyer that doesn't want you to do that, wants to give you a great offer, that's up to you, or up to the buyers to be able to do. But that myth of the seller's not going to be paying commission. No, they just have a choice now, and depending on what that offer is to them, on what they want to be able to pay that. And I guess they had a choice before, but it was different. Now we get to see that hand come to us, and then we could negotiate from there.
Yeah, I think the disconnect when I say, especially in our office, there's confusion. When I say that we're not putting co-op in our listing agreement, doesn't mean we're saying that the seller's not paying anything. Is not at all what I'm saying.
Means we don't know that number yet.
We're just not predetermining what that number is. And we'll let the buyer's broker determine what that is, because frankly, they can't get paid any more that's in their buyer agency agreement. So if they have 2% in their buyer agency agreement, they can't get 2.5. So why as a seller would I want to offer 2.5 if the buyer's broker can't get more than 2.0? Yeah. And they're going to give that 0.5% back to the buyer. Well, I'd rather have my seller get that, so sure. Let's let the buyer broker ask what they want and then go from there. I think that's in the best interest of the seller who we're representing. And, of course, we love buyers brokers. I work on the buy side, you do, we all do. So, the last thing I would want is people to think that, we don't appreciate that side of it, because without that, there's no market. It's just a different way of doing it. And I think it puts from everything that was below the table to now above board, everyone knows what's being paid. And it's not a closing cost credit, which I think there was a lot of confusion too as we went into this.
Definitely one of the confusion pieces.
Yeah. I mean, when we went into this, NAR and all these, it was really hard to get concrete understanding of how this was going to be factored in, if commission was going to be worked in. And a lot of people said it was going to be through closing costs. And So, but that's not the case. Closing costs is different from seller paying buyer's brokerage as a separate addendum on the contract. Well, that's clear now, and that's not listed as a concession when it's closed out in the MLS, which is good because then that doesn't affect on appraisals because the appraisers have to factor in concessions. But a concession is considered something that the seller pays the buyer, not what the seller pays buyer brokerage. Those are two separate things.
Yeah. It's just like it's all laid out. To me, it's who's getting paid what, and on each side you understand it. You understand all your closing costs. You understand that, like, hey, maybe I got multiple offers. You're going to see different agents submit their commissions maybe differently, and from there you could look at it from a net perspective from a seller. And to me, I've gone on now a couple CMAs, and honestly, I think it's just better. I think it's like, let's let it come to us and then let me negotiate and support you in negotiations on your behalf. And let's work through this together to make sure that you get the best deal possible. And to me, I think I know it's scary for many of us as we are still in this first couple of weeks, but I think it's going to be better for our industry long term, and it's going to allow us to just be more transparent and give a higher level of service to our clients. With the seller side, I think we've talked about a lot here, and obviously this is impacting the buyers. And there's always been a buyer agency agreement. We've had it around since you've been in business, probably even before that, right? But we always used them as an industry. Okay. Right? We haven't really, right?
I have not.
Yeah,
I thought you said we have.
No, I haven't. I haven't at all.
Pretty much no one did. I mean, some brokers did, but and if they did, a lot of time it was when the buyer writes a contract, not when they initially met them.
For sure. The change in my business from being a part of Royal Family, going in and starting out this year, we have a listing presentation and we have a buyer presentation. I remember being nervous going into this year, like what's going to happen, and especially with buyers, just because buyers don't have a lot of extra cash to be able to. A lot of them don't have a lot of extra cash unless they're pulling from equity to go into that next home. So it's nerve-wracking, right? Like how are people going to get paid? Is this going to crash the industry? All these sorts of things. The buyer presentation has been one of the most I would say it's like the most powerful tool I've added this year into my business. I don't work with tons of buyers, but I definitely work with them. And to me, I've really come from a place of it's just like my listing presentation. I have a value. Right. And I want to showcase that value so that they know that I'm not just a door opener. I'm not a Redfin. I'm not a Zillow. You're not going to get that level of service from me. I'm going to go above and beyond to ensure that you get the best deal possible and you get the best service possible. And by going through that presentation and at the end of it saying, hey, this is the change in the industry. This is the buyer agency agreement now. It's been here for a while, but we are putting it into play. I've had people ask questions, but nobody's been like, everybody's been like, oh, okay, well, you need to get paid. That makes sense to me. Where I think beforehand, maybe I was a little nervous that people wouldn't be able to do that, but it's showing our value. Yeah. And I think that's the biggest piece as agents now. Guys, the Redfins, the Zillows of the world, the app-based businesses, those models are going to continue to grow in every facet of every industry, right? They're going to be here in real estate. They're going to come, but there's nothing more humanizing our business, working with a local family brokerage, working with a person that has been in the business for a long time, that knows the ins and the outs of not only the industry as a whole, but also the local nuances that are going to help you get the best deal possible. We get to show that value now.
What I really like about it is that, yes, we're sitting down with them, we're going over all of our value, right? And when you really sit down, kind of like a listing presentation, when you really sit down and you go over everything that you do, there's a ton of value there. And we've always done that on the listing side. So now we do that on the buyer side.
Makes sense.
And they see everything that's involved. And then it's an employment agreement, right? They're saying that they're hiring you, and now you are their agent, right? And your job is to find them a home. So it's much different, because before it was like, you set them up on a search and you send them properties, you meet them at the property, you hopefully establish some rapport, and then you work with them. Now you're setting the expectation about what you do, the value you bring, how you manage the entire transaction, and how you're doing everything you can to find them a home. And before, all you had to do was just open up a door and you got procuring cause and you got paid.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas now you have to actually show them that, they are signing this to work with you.
Mm-hmm.
And now what I love about that is that now I can go to a for sale by owner and talk with that seller and bring my buyer in and not have to worry about getting a compensation agreement from the for sale by owner. Whereas before we had to, see if they were going to pay us a co-op and get something signed before we bring them in. We don't have to do that now because we have this agreement from the buyer. And the buyer knows that we're going to do everything possible to work that into the offer. So then the seller pays us just like it was before,
Mm-hmm.
but now it's worked into the offer. And if they don't pay us, what is in the buyer agency agreement, then, the seller maybe pays part of it. The buyer makes up the difference. Or maybe we have to talk about a way to make this one work because the seller maybe is only offering X amount and the seller's tight or the buyer's tight. But, new construction, calling up maybe an expired or a canceled listing or going door to door, like it opens you up to you really being able to be proactive and having this agreement that that they're going to pay you because you're working it into the offer. Whereas before we would always have to go to that seller and get that signed.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason we have to do that now because they're agreeing to compensate us. And that puts more, I think, weight on or more on us to really do our job and find them a home.
That's it. I feel like, not to talk crap about myself in the past or other realtors, but like when your commission's on there and houses are available, your job isn't that hard. And to me, I think this piece is just going to not everybody is going to make it, but we're going to have to negotiate our value. But what goes into that? Everybody's service level is different, but I look at it agent to agent. And there's a lot of crappy agents out there that you work with that aren't, as you would say, their voicemail is full. They're not responding to messages quickly. And they're writing up bad offers those. That's gonna be harder for them right now, in my opinion, because it's and those are the people that might eventually get out of the industry because it's not an easy job to understand what happens and understanding a home and what the risks that are there with it. That's not somebody that just could open a door. In most cases, there's some experience level that comes through it. And I think that's something that we're going to be able to continue to be able to add to people.
I do wonder how much we'll actually see in decline in membership because I was listening to a podcast the other day. Who was it? Maybe it was Unfiltered. I forget. Anyways, have you heard?
Sure.
There was a stat, and I should have looked it up, but it said the median number of homes that the average so it was 1.6 million realtors, in the U.S. The median numbers of homes sold was 0. So the median is when you pick the exact middle.
Yeah.
So there's so many brokers that don't do anything.
For sure.
And are they going to get out of the business with this change? I don't know. I mean, they weren't doing anything anyways.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them are just, sitting and just waiting for one transaction a year and friends and family. I think the only way that they would get out is if you see fees go up a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So if we get fees pushed on us because now we have to, buy into new programs to get access to more information because it's not all in the MLS.
Killer margins.
Then I could see you seeing brokers getting out of it if the barriers to entry increase. But I don't know. I'm still not sure. I'm sure we'll see a decline, but I'm just not sure how much that'll be.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see as we continue to evolve, like everything else. That's a different outlook than I think what I've looked at. I looked at it, I kind of come from the professionalism route. Is if those agents that sell 1 or 2 deals a year not always are the most professional in the setting. And I feel like that might get harder now because agent communication's never been more important across every aspect of the transaction to ensure that both clients are taken care of. And there's a win there on both sides from the commission. So it'll be interesting to see. I think we'll keep that for another episode and kind of roll from there.
Yeah.
But anything else anybody needs to know about the NAR settlement now? It's changed. We're still alive. Some of us were underneath desk, waking up in the morning, like looking up, making sure everything was still good. MLS still worked, and businesses as usual are just submitting a different addendum at the end of the day when we're submitting our offers and having different styles of conversations with clients.
I mean, it's early. We're what, 2 weeks after. So
I'm an optimist. I'm an optimist, bro. Yeah.
But I feel like once we all kind of have a common understanding how business is done, we're going to adapt.
Yeah. Agreed. Cool. Well, until the next time, man, let's stop talking about the NAR settlement and go sell some houses. So and enjoy the conversation today, man. Have a great day. Peace. Thanks everybody for listening.